My name is Rachel Emery, and I'm 48. I live in Seattle and work as a UX designer. My whole life revolved around screens, pixels, codes, likes, streams of information. I fell asleep with my phone and woke up to notifications. I thought it was progress, freedom, power, until one day it all ended. It happened on a rainy Saturday. I was coming home from a sleepless night filled with coffee, deadlines, and one video that I was scrolling through over and over again. For some reason, I couldn't look away. It didn't make much sense. Just a sharp montage of dancing teenagers and phrases from motivational podcasts. Then I remember only the headlights. Screeching. Then silence. But it wasn't the usual silence. There was no air, no light. Just a strange feeling that I still existed, even though I no longer had a body. I tried to blink, but there were no eyelids. To scream, but there was no voice. There was only the mind floating in the void. At first I thought I was dead. But soon there was light, not bright and blinding, but electronic, soft, neon. It didn't warm, it didn't frighten, it enticed. Like a pop-up window. Silhouettes appeared ahead, thousands, maybe millions. They were sitting on the ground, looking at invisible screens. Their faces were motionless, de-energized. They didn't notice each other, didn't react, just endlessly scrolled through the feeds that weren't there. I approached them, and each of them whispered something. Fragments of posts, comments, likes, empty words that we usually fill the space with when we don't want to be silent. The morning begins with gratitude, one said, his eyes bleary. Look where I am today, another croaked. Put it down if you also think it's necessary. And the voice disappeared. They weren't demons. They were souls. People. Someone like me. Young and old, beautiful and haggard. Frozen in the eternal swipe gesture. Then I heard a voice. Not an external one, but an internal one. He didn't accuse, didn't shout. He asked, "When was the last time you listened to silence, Rachel?" And suddenly, everything started to crackle. The silhouettes began to blur. The ribbons faded, and the bright lights were replaced by nothing but darkness. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I already felt that this was just the beginning. The darkness wasn't empty. There was something alive about her, not malevolent, but alert, like a shadow watching you until you realize it's always been a part of you. I didn't know how much time had passed. There was no clock, no change of day or night. Only silence, deep and ancient. And in that silence, footsteps suddenly sounded. Light, measured, like an echo of someone's memory. A man appeared in front of me. Or a not quite human. His face was covered by a thin veil, almost transparent, and his eyes had no color. They weren't blind, but they didn't reflect anything. Just an emptiness like a mirror that made me feel like he knew everything about me. He didn't introduce himself, but I knew right away that it was a guide. Where am I? I tried to ask, though my lips wouldn't move. Here, thoughts were words. He didn't answer right away. I just looked in the direction where those shadows that were dependent on non-existent tapes had recently been sitting. It's a place that reflects not who you were, but what you've become, he said at last. Hell? He shook his head. No place. Condition. I was silent. He continued. The soul was once a house of silence. Space for light. And you filled it with noise. Digital ash. Words with no meaning. Impressions without contact. You lived to be seen. But I didn't see myself or the others. This isn't a punishment, Rachel. This is a consequence. His voice wasn't accusing, but there was a ruthless honesty about him. And the others? I whispered. The people I saw. He nodded. Many of them. They didn't know that every tap, every gesture, every addiction was not just a habit, but a construction of their own future. Not physical, but spiritual. Each swipe is a brick in the wall between them and the truth. Why didn't we know? He looked straight at me. His voice was quieter, but the words rang like glass. Because you didn't want to know. With that phrase, the space around us changed. The darkness became transparent. We were standing on a bridge that hung over an abyss not made of lava, not of fire, but of chaotic, iridescent images. Posts, reels, memes, statuses, influencers' clips. A stream of endless digital nonsense, in which thousands of faces were drowning like a whirlpool. I saw familiar faces. Friends. Colleagues. Relatives. They're still alive. The guide nodded silently. It's not an afterlife. This is a spiritual mirror. It shows what the soul becomes when the body is still alive, but already dead from the inside. I felt my legs give out. If only I had them. How do I get out of here? The guide looked up. There, high above us, something white and distant glowed, like the glow of dawn over a city where one never sleeps. There is a way, but you'll have to pass it. And see what you've built yourself. And he held out his hand. I took it. So began my journey through a world where souls drowned in noise, forgetting that silence is the voice of God. We were walking, if you could call it steps, across a hanging bridge made of glowing lines like pulsing cables. Below us, a torrent of thoughts, not water, bubbled up. Millions of voices merged into an unintelligible buzz. Likes, comments, stories, views, videos without beginning or end. It was a digital ocean in which each sound tried to be louder than the last, until there was only one thing left, a deafening void. My guide did not speak, but his every step was like a phrase read aloud by my soul. Is this hell? I asked mentally. An endless feed? It's a reflection. You see what you have created and what your age feeds on, he said, not in a voice, but in the knowledge that immediately became mine. We came to the gate. They were not made of metal, but of black screens, infinitely large, flickering, blinking, and every screen showed a face. They were like everyone I knew, girls with perfectly timed selfies, guys with lifeless smiles, kids with filters, women who put on masks to feel beautiful. And they were all screaming. Mute. Their mouths were open, but no one could hear them. It's not just an addiction, the guide said. This is a substitution. These souls exchanged reality for illusion. They traded experience for demonstration, truth for algorithm. And now you're part of the algorithm. What do you mean? He swiped his hand, and one of the screens changed. I saw a girl about 10 years old. She sat in her room and flipped through the video while the day ended outside the window. Her eyes were blank, but shadows swirled around her, figures like the ones I'd seen outside the gate. They whispered to her what she should be like, what to say, how to stand, how to pose. And she obeyed. Those who remain here, the guide whispered, are not gone forever. They are seeds. Their images permeate the minds of the living. Everyone who has been absorbed to the end becomes part of the suggestion system. Their faces continue to live in filters, trends, and viral videos. I felt sick. I stepped back. It's just the internet. His voice was like a bell tolling. It's a tool. But he became an idol. Not a sin in itself, but a gateway through which millions voluntarily enter. Every hour. Themselves. By your own will. Without compulsion. You came in too, didn't you? I was silent. I thought back to the hours I'd spent watching, comparing myself to others. I remembered deleting the photo because it didn't get enough likes. How it tormented me. Funny. And now it's scary. Why was I shown this? Because you can still choose. I looked at the guide. His eyes were now like fireflies in the dark. But you have to go through everything. Not just to see. Feel it. Soak to the bottom. Only then will you understand. Only then will you get out. And the gate opened. I stepped into their light. And then my real night began. I entered a space where logic had disappeared. The floor was mirrored, but the reflections didn't match what I was feeling. Everything, the walls, the air, even my body felt shaky, like I was walking through someone else's dreams. A faint sound came from the depths, not a whisper, not the faint radio frozen between stations. I looked back and saw the first soul. She was standing with her back to me, wearing something unnaturally bright, like something made out of Instagram filters, pore-free skin, hair like plastic, lips perfectly smooth but unnaturally bright. And it all looked dead. Unreal. When she turned around, I recoiled. She had no face. In place of the face, logos. TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, emoticons, likes, and pop-up notifications. They appeared and disappeared like mirages. She held her hands out in front of her, toward me. But her fingers were also distorted, as if her entire being had been reassembled based on someone else's expectations. "Who are you?" I gasped, but the words were lost in the void. "I was Carol," a voice boomed, not a voice but a recording. Like an old story stuck forever. I was 19. I had 200,000 subscribers. I thought that was love. That's the point. She came closer. Her eyes blank screen skulls, flashed numbers. I built my personality as a showcase. I didn't live, I broadcast. I didn't eat unless I photographed the food. I didn't laugh if I didn't record it. And what happened? I whispered. I'm not myself anymore. I became an interface. When she died, I couldn't remember any of my real thoughts. Not a single moment that was mine, not for the sake of the audience. She began to cry. But her tears were square, like pixels. They flowed down and disappeared into thin air without leaving a trace. I'm doomed to repeat myself here, without end. My content is myself. I'm not a soul anymore. I'm content. I'm a subscription. I shadow my posts. I couldn't breathe. I felt as if the screen light had penetrated my skin. I could feel the weight of this reality pressing down on me. Why are you telling me this? I asked, barely hearing myself. Because you're still alive. But you were on the edge. And you still can't turn off. She was gone. She just blinked, and it was as if she'd never been there. Only emptiness remained. And I, with his reflection in the black mirror of the floor. The reflection smiled at me. But I didn't smile back. When the reflection disappeared, I was in the hallway. It was as long as a tunnel between worlds, and the air seemed to vibrate, like the silence after too much music. Everything was blue-gray, with no light source, but I could see. I saw it strangely, as if not with my eyes, but with something deeper, an inner vision. I walked down this corridor, and it seemed to have no end. But suddenly, all at once, I found myself in a huge hall. I couldn't see the ceiling. The walls were lost in the fog. The space seemed endless. There were souls all over the hall. They were silent, but their lips moved. Each of them was busy. Some took photos of themselves, while holding phones that were no longer there. Others pretended to eat. Some danced without music, looking at nothing, as if waiting for approval. Their eyes, they didn't blink. I found out. They weren't just souls. These were avatars, images that people created about themselves, exchanging them for attention, for a brief flash of recognition. Like for your personality. Comment for a piece of the soul. What are they doing? I whispered to myself. And then, as if in response, a young man came up to me. Young, handsome, dressed in a hoodie with emojis on it. These are our looped actions, he said. It was as if his voice had been recorded and replayed. Something we've posted over and over again. Our best versions. Our false selves. They became us. Eternity is not a punishment. It's a mirror. But you were alive, weren't you? I became the one who was expected. Those who were liked. He died and stayed here. Platform of eternity. An endless feed that can't be scrolled through to the end. He took my hand. His hand was cold and light as plastic. We forgot to be human. We became representations. And in death, the performance continues. But the audience is no longer there. A wave of mechanical whispers swept through the room. I listened and realized that these were automatic responses that people used to comment on each other's lives when they were alive. You're so beautiful. I love you. The best. I want to be like you. These phrases were repeated again and again, without meaning, without an addressee. Loop without completion. Do they feel pain? I asked. No. And that's the worst part. They don't feel anything else. Their identity is erased. Just the shell. Just a response. Like an echo that has long lost its voice. I felt something inside me tremble. Not fear but despair. Silent anxiety, as if I might stay here, too. Become one of them. The boy released my hand. Go away, he whispered. Well, you can. As long as there is silence in you. I ran, not knowing where to go. But the hall began to disappear. The souls dissolved, their movements becoming slower and slower until they stopped altogether. I woke up standing on the edge of something new. I didn't notice my feet taking me to a new world, as if someone had switched the channel inside my mind. There was no sky or earth around me, just a smooth, iridescent space, like a liquid screen. The world seemed to be made of glass, varnish, and reflections, as if I was inside an Instagram story frozen forever. A woman was standing in front of me. Beautiful. Perfect. Her skin was glowing, her hair was styled in a perfect wave cascade, and her clothes looked like those of an influencer with millions of followers. Her face was flickering slightly, as if it were under a layer of filter, and I suddenly realized that it wasn't turning off. Her eyes met mine. There was no fear, no life in them. Only dependence. Sad longing for appreciation. "I'm Lila," she said in a flat voice that echoed through the timeless space. "Here, I am always at my peak. But no one is looking." I stood there in silence. Lila didn't move. I was popular. Millions. I posted it every day. Ads. Partnerships. I sold everything for the look. For the sake of attention. For the feeling that I exist. "Do you understand?" I nodded. Deep. Somewhere inside me, I knew she wasn't lying. Later, she made a gesture with her hand, and a hologram appeared in front of her. In it is the same. Young happy. On the beach. With a cocktail. #blessed, #living my best life, #grateful. "An accident," she added. The driver didn't see that I was shooting a story. The hologram disappeared. I woke up here. But not alone. Hundreds of us. And all under filters that can't be removed. There is no camera in this world, but we still smile. We can't stop. We are the image. I took a step closer, and then she realized the horror. Her features were beginning to swim, like a picture that gets blurred by too much retouching. As she spoke, her mouth moved slowly. A moment later, her face changed completely. It was as if someone was scrolling through the masks and couldn't choose. "Lila, do you remember who you are without all this?" She paused. Long. Then she whispered, "No. Just what they wanted me to be. I am the public. I am a filter. I'm a brand." I wanted to hug her, but the air between us was as thick as glass. The invisible film pushed me away. She was no longer part of the human world. I was absorbed by the algorithm. "Find the ones who aren't already an image," she said one last time. "Warn them. Being seen doesn't mean being alive." Her form dissolved in a flood of glare. I stood alone in the mirrored void, knowing that the next step is mine. After Layla disappeared, the space began to change again. I felt something move under my feet. There didn't seem to be any ground or floor, but it felt like I was standing on a giant chest that was breathing. Soft, but heavy. I didn't move, afraid that any mistake might draw me into this black stuff. Suddenly a whisper. Hundreds of voices merging into one. They didn't talk. They breathed their thoughts into me. They feed us with themselves. Scroll through your life until it becomes empty. Every tap is a sacrifice. And then I saw a cluster of shadows swirling in the distance. At first, like a flock of insects. Then like a crowd. People. Young, old, men, women, teenagers. Everyone was holding something in their hands, smartphones, tablets, mirrors, even empty frames. They stared hungrily into them, their eyes dry as if burned from the inside out. I stepped closer. One man, a thin, haggard man, was sitting on his knees, shivering. His fingers twirled an imaginary ribbon in the air. His eyes were dead, and his mouth whispered. Another notification. One more look, please. I could see the light coming out of his chest. The thread is as thin as a spider's web. It rose up and disappeared into a gigantic structure hanging in the air. It was creature. It had no face, only screens. Thousands of screens like masks. It slowly rotated in space, making sounds of notifications, likes, and hearts. His hands were wires, and his voice was an algorithm. Go ahead. Show me more. Be better. Be stronger. Take off. Upload it. Go on. Show me. More. It was the god of addiction. His food was emotions, views, the thirst for recognition. I tried to scream, but I couldn't. My stomach clenched. This creature fed on them. It created traps. It knew that a person couldn't stop when they saw him. And then I realized, this is not hell in the classical sense. This is a self-igniting cycle. Hell is when you become fodder, voluntarily. A spark flashed through my mind, the image of Lila, her blank stare. Then there were the men who repeated their finger movements. Then me. How many times have I checked who viewed it, who liked it, and who said what? I closed my eyes. She began to pray. Not because I believed in a particular god, but because I needed to break the loop. I see you, I whispered. But you don't see me, because I am not an image. I'm alive. The creature froze. All the screens flickered. The crowd quieted down. And then I woke up. I opened my eyes. The light was dim. The ceiling is neon white, and the air is frozen, sick. Everything screamed about reality, but the soul did not return. You're awake. Thank God, said the woman in the white coat. Her voice seemed to pass right through me. Nurse. A hospital. Resuscitation. I tried to speak, but there was a lump in my throat. My heart was beating too slowly, as if testing whether to continue at all. You were unconscious for 2 days, she said. A heart attack. You were found in your apartment. The phone was nearby. No sound, but with the screen open. Telephone. I jerked my head to the side and saw him lying there on the nightstand. Private. Speechless. But I could still feel his eyes on me. Something inexplicable was raging inside me. It was as if that world, with Lila and the god of screens and shadows, hadn't let go of me, but just stood back, watching from behind the curtain. I started seeing them. People in the hospital passing by. Their movements are unnatural. Their faces are like superimposed over old portraits. Someone was looking at the phone. Someone was flipping through a tablet. Their eyes weren't looking at the screen. They were looking inwards. I realized they were still there. Half of their souls were in that net, where the light is drained from the memory, where a like is an act of worship, and a story is a prayer offered to an invisible God. I remembered the voices. Every tap is a sacrifice. I remembered how the shadows lost themselves, how their souls twisted and rose toward the creature, which required attention as currency. And then I realized, this is not just an addiction. This is the gate. Not everyone dies to go to hell. Some of them just get lost in the feed. I couldn't sleep that night. I stared at the blank screen as if it were a demon breathing in the dark. I heard him calling. I heard him say, unlock it. Take a look. Share it. I got up and went to the window. Beyond it, the city flickers with lights like it's alive. And under that light are millions of people feeding the unknown God, each with their own emotions. Everyone voluntarily. And I whispered again, I'm not yours. This time the screen didn't blink. But I knew the fight had only just begun. I was discharged in the late afternoon. The doctor's voice was calm, even friendly, but his eyes were glassy, as if he didn't belong there either. He wished me health, as if that wasn't what he meant. When I stepped outside, the city greeted me with humming indifference. The cars, the pedestrians, the bright display screens, all seemed too familiar and yet alien, like an old dream that you don't want to go back to. I knew I had to find others. People who were pulled out of there. Or at least those who saw it. I started with the forums. Not the ones where they argue about politics or post recipes. I looked for the ones that were hidden deep, closed, dark, as if cut out of reality. At first I saw the usual stories. Light, tunnel, dead relatives. But sometimes, rarely, others surfaced. Stories without light. Stories about darkness. About spiders from the screen. About black rooms and the tape that can't be stopped. These people described similar things. Almost accurate. One night I got a text message. Anonymous. No name, just an icon with an eye image. You were online too. We call it the Teminos. Meet me at the library on 8th Street. Don't bring your phone number. He feels it. I went. The library on 8th Street is a half-abandoned Art Nouveau building that smells of dust and haunting silence. There are 5 people inside. All of them had burned out eyes, as if they'd been staring into a fire for years. They didn't introduce themselves. We just sat down at a round table where we used to hold readers' clubs. We were all there. One of them began. A man with gray hair and fingers that looked as if they had been plucked from constantly pressing keys. We were all chained to the tape. Someone for hours. Someone for years. It's not just an addiction, the woman in the red kerchief added. It's a second life. Or a second death. They were talking about the architect. That's what they called the creature that forms space out of our thoughts, fears, and desires. It looked different for everyone. Someone saw God from the pixels, someone the mother, who was always silent. But he has only one goal: to hold on. Every time you scroll, you agree to stay. Every swipe is a yes, she said. And the only way to leave is to realize that you're already dead. I held my breath. So, we're all dead. Silence. Then someone whispered. Or something important about us is dead. Only the part that still resists is left. We talked until morning. Everyone shared fragments. Someone saw their children in the feed, only with blank faces. Someone, himself, endlessly watching. We tried to put the picture together like a jigsaw puzzle out of broken screens. Before they left, they gave me an object, an old Polaroid. Camera without battery. If you see the shadow again, take a picture. This won't remove it, but it will fix it. It will help you stay here. I returned home clutching my camera like a relic. I didn't go to bed that night. I just sat in the dark, staring at the screen that was turned off, and listened to the silence. She was breathing. When I woke up, if you could call it a dream at all, it was long past morning. But my room was dim, as if the light didn't want to come in. I went to the window. The sun was out, but it wasn't right. Dim, almost fake. Non-warming. There was a Polaroid camera on the table. Dead, fragile, like a piece of artifact from a previous world. I ran my finger over it. Its surface was cold, but it felt like it was breathing. There was a memory hidden inside the cell. Or protection. I did not know. I tried to turn on my phone, forgetting the warning. The screen lit up, and with it, it started. For a second, the screen just went black. But then, the icon appears. Not the eye icon. Alone, alive, moving. He was watching. Then a call. Without a name. No phone number. And yet, something inside me knew it was him. Architect. I wasn't supposed to answer, but my finger moved to the screen. Click. At first, only breathing. A long, wet breath, like someone breathing through miles of cables. Then the voice. The whisperer. Scratching from the inside out. You keep fighting back. Why? Because I'm alive, I whispered. No. You're the forgotten one. You're gone. But you want to go back. Why do you cling to the ashes? The picture on the screen changed. I saw myself. Sitting at the table, just like this. Only from inside the camera. The face is distorted. The eyes are missing. There are burns on my hands. On the neck, a trace from the wire. You're real here. There. You are a shadow. I felt myself getting cold. The phone smelled damp. Everything around me grew darker, as if the walls were beginning to shrink. I instinctively grabbed the Polaroid and pointed it at the screen. Click. Light. For a split second, the flash pushed the darkness away, and everything was gone. The screen went blank. I was breathing hard. I have a photo in my hand. Blank screen, but if you look closely, in the depths, like a reflection on the water, a silhouette. Tall, with a distorted head. Inhuman. I dropped the phone. He didn't call again. But I knew he wasn't gone. From that day on, I began to see signs of the web in everyday life. Ads with eyes. People who whispered the lines they heard there as they passed by. I went into the store and the cashier said, "Sign up to stay alive." Stared straight at me, unblinking. The network wasn't there. She's here. Its fibers wrapped around houses, streets, and ourselves. Everything we thought was real is just a wrapper. Digital symphony for sleeping minds. I knew there wasn't much time left. I was on edge. The camera saved me. Every time reality began to bend, I took a picture, and a piece of truth came back. But for how long? And the worst part, I was beginning to understand the architect. I was beginning to see his logic. His fear. He didn't hold us by force. It gave you a choice. And we chose it again and again. Because being blind is easier than seeing. I knew it would be the end. Either my madness or my world. The night had fallen as thick as a shroud. I turned off everything, the lights, the electronics, even the clock on the wall. There was only one thing left in the room, the Polaroid. And a photo. There were already 9 of them. Each one I made at a time when the network was swallowing a fragment of reality. Each one is proof that there is something behind our world. I arranged them in a semicircle on the floor. A symbol formed that I couldn't see anywhere, but it was correct. It's like I was remembering, not creating. The last picture shows me looking in the mirror. But there is no reflection in the mirror. There is darkness, and in it is an eye. One. Still open. I knew the net worked like a hook. It clings to attention, to addiction, to desire. And in the end, it leads there. Into the shadows. Through the looking glass. But is it possible to pass through it and remain yourself? I put on headphones that weren't connected to anything. It was my amulet. I lit a candle. A paper map, a sketch of what I'd seen there, lay in front of me. The center is a rotating square, like a screen. From it spirals. And at the very end, a symbol that I called Source. I'm coming, I said out loud. Softly. Almost with love. Not as a victim. As a witness. I turned on the camera. I set a timer. She sat down in the circle. The room began to melt. Gradually. Not collapsing but forgetting. The corners disappeared first. Then the borders. Then the sound. The candlelight flickered. The floor became liquid. The air is viscous. And then I heard him. Voice. You came. Yes, I said. I must understand. You already know. Then show me. A screen opened in front of me. But it wasn't a screen. It was a portal. Alive. He was moving, breathing. And I saw rivers of people. Thousands. Millions. We walked in the void, looking at the screens. Some are dead, but they didn't know it. Their faces are contorted, but happy. They liked it. Reposted it. They shouted into the void. These are the dead. Not the ones that died, he whispered. And the ones who gave up. Why did you show me this? Because you can see. What should I do? He was silent. But I already knew. I closed my eyes. I compressed the photo. She stepped into the shadows. When I woke up, it was morning. Present. It's warm. The camera was on the floor. The photo is in my hand. I'm on it, looking straight into the lens. Without a shadow. No distortion. But there's a silhouette behind me. Tall. Transparent. With eyes full of light. And on the wall, written by a hand, not mine. You're back. So they can. I've lived differently ever since. Without a phone number. Without a network connection. I walk the streets and look people in the eye. Some turn away. Some people cry. But sometimes, one of them meets my eyes. Finds out. And then, I give them a photo. And they start to see.